on the internet, which is nice. Internet,
And there's my notification.
you didn't
Yep.
you didn't miss anything. I'm so sorry to tell you that you absolutely 100% did not miss anything other than I have a protein bar sitting back here. And I'm pretty sure most of the chocolate is on the wrapper. So that's a bummer. So Anthony, I have something that I don't think is news, but is also news, which is a game that Sam Fortier and I decided that we're going to play for the rest of the spring, which is tomorrow, final practice, and then in training camp, which is It News? Is the game we're going to play. If I told you that Jaden Daniels is like already QB1, is that news?
I think it's news, just because a lot of us assumed there was going to be some type of competition. You know, it was going to probably brew over into training camp, and it wouldn't be announced, I guess, early. I guess they technically haven't announced it. It's more so, I guess, your
Well, that's the thing,
observation
is right. And
from
who
being in
knows?
practice.
Who knows? Maybe tomorrow
Yeah.
they announce it. Maybe tomorrow Dan Quinn comes out and is like, hey, guess what, guys? Jaden Daniels is officially QB1. And if that's the case, then, I mean, cool, I guess. But at the end of the day, they haven't made that announcement yet. But when they've rotated most of the spring, all of a sudden they're not. Like all of a sudden today, when I expected Marcus Mariota to be taking the number one reps because, you know, he's been alternating with Jaden Daniels, it was Jaden Daniels again taking the number one reps. And I don't know how many days in a row a dude's got to be quarterback one before we just say, like, that dude's quarterback one. And, again, how big of a deal is that? I don't know. He's the number 2 overall pick. And I think the other part of this is, like, Marcus Mariota is not playing particularly well, which seems like a relevant piece of this, right? It's not like Marcus is out there killing it and Jaden's also playing pretty well and showing that, like, Jaden Daniels is probably the right guy for the job. No, like, Marcus Mariota looks like Marcus Mariota, which is not great, a guy who's not here because he's an incredible player. And Jaden Daniels looks like a guy who's got a really bright future after being the number 2 pick in the draft and is already the better pro quarterback. And so I just don't know how many practices they needed to go, yeah, we know where this is headed. He's better right now. He's our future. At that point, there's no reason not to play him. So he's QB1. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. We'll see who ultimately takes the first snaps in the spring. And they're still doing a lot of rotating at other positions, even mixing and matching. Like on the O-line today, they cross-trained, which is something that is fairly unusual. Typically, you want to get your O-line group as many reps together as they can get. But, like, knock, knock, everybody. I think Jaden Daniels is already QB1. I don't know if they'll say. There's a chance Dan Quinn announces it tomorrow. He didn't speak today. But I just don't know how many practices in a row the dude needs to be the number 1 quarterback before he's the number 1 quarterback, and I'm pretty sure we're at 3.
I mean, but when you hear that, you know, he's throwing the ball exceptionally well, he's getting in the building, he's learning the playbook, he seems to be understanding the playbook at the same rate, if not faster, than a Marcus Mariota. When you put all of those, you know, pieces together, wouldn't you necessarily want him to, you know,
of course,
be that guy?
This is not a bad thing. It's just kind of funny because it's just kind of funny because typically you're thinking like, oh, there's going to be a proclamation, and it's almost like, hey, dummies, out there watching, you and your little press badges. Although they don't actually give us physical credentials for this time of the year, I guess. They do check your name, so you better be on the list. But they don't. Once you're in, they're like, oh, you must have gotten in the club. Yeah, like normally they announce it. Instead, it's kind of like, hey guys, what do you see, huh? Like I remember it was either KOC or Sean. I think it was KOC. There would be sometimes that you'd ask him a question and he'd be like, "You're watching, right?" And he wouldn't do it in a mean way, but it's kind of like, yeah, because sometimes reporters will ask questions that are just they say a statement of fact, and they want the coach to be like, yeah, and then expand on it. And sometimes Kevin and some other coaches that I've covered would just kind of be like, yeah, what's your question? And it's like, are we seeing that right? It's like, yeah, that was a piece of basic information. But it's kind of almost like that. It's like, hey, Dan, it seems like Jaden's been QB1 the last couple days. Is he just QB1? Like, what are we doing here? And Dan maybe will hem and haw through it. Maybe he'll just go, yeah, Jaden's our starter. You know, everything's going to be a competition in training camp. But, like, he right now is the first guy on the depth chart. My guess is they probably don't do that. My guess is they probably go, no, hey, nobody's put pads on yet. We can't have a competition until there's we see how he reacts to a live rush. And, like, that's legit, right? You want to see how he reacts to a live rush. I mean, there was a couple times today where he definitely was like, and he talked about it after practice, which you'll hear coming up in our pick 6, where he was basically like, oh, my God, John Allen's here real fast. Because there was a couple times that Allen and Payne got pressure today. And, yeah, you got to figure out how to deal with that in the NFL and to just be like, yep, this is our guy no matter what. Plus, like, you know, Lord willing, he stays healthy and never misses a game his entire career. But, you know, things happen. You name a guy a starter, someone gets banged up, all of a sudden are you backtracking? Like, it's one of those things where I look at how they treated the draft process, and Adam Peters was so big on make sure that we don't announce or, quote-unquote, make a decision until we have to. And if they treat the starting quarterback job, QB1 job, like that, they won't name a starter until later in camp. And it'll be one of those things where Jaden Daniels will take every first-team rep for a month, and they'll refuse to name him the starter. And it's just a little bit silly, but it's just because they don't have to name a starter yet. But that's kind of what the spring has been. They've split. Even on days they've split, there's been days where they don't evenly split it, and the split favors Jaden. So some days where, like, Marcus is 1, they've given Jaden a few extra reps, I'm pretty sure. And then they definitely have had more days where Jaden is the 1. And here at mandatory minicamp at the end of the process, we're 2 for 2 so far. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, there is no official announcement. There is no official proclamation. But if Jaden Daniels is QB1 tomorrow, I don't know what the heck else we're supposed to think. Pretty sure Jaden Daniels is your starting quarterback, and it didn't even make it out of the spring until he surpassed Marcus Mariota, which is, considering how Marcus Mariota has been playing, A-OK with me. And by the way, based off how Jaden Daniels is playing, A-OK with me. We'll talk about the days that both of them had and a few more observations. Minicamp Day 2, we're live in Ashburn next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, and we're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Big Zed guy, Anthony?
I'm not a big Zed guy, but I love this song.
Oh, I actually am a big Zed guy. Clarity is probably my favorite, but he's got a couple of bangers. Anyway, apropos of none of our musical tastes. Still to come on the show today, here in Ashburn, Commanders defensive line coach Daryl Tap's going to meander on over to the bubble. They got some meetings up through 6 o'clock, so 6:15 he's going to hop on over, pop on a headset, and we'll talk to the former Washington player, current Washington coach, coming up at 6:15 tonight. Our pick 6 at 6. Of course, we'll talk about the NBA Finals. An episode of This, That, and the Other Thing featuring the Mystics winning a basketball game. Hallelujah. That's coming up at 5:45. And we'll talk a little NBA Finals as well as we go here. But Commanders and day 2 of OTAs in the spotlight now as we are out here. Not OTAs, minicamp. Is the terminology for this final stretch of the offseason program. And, Anthony, another day where the defense created a bunch of turnovers. By the way, speaking of defense, Derek Forrest also on the show today. The Commanders safety and I chatted after practice. And I will first, Anthony, I need to send you the audio. That's probably helpful. And then we'll play it at 4:45. But defense got a couple more turnovers today. And one of them, I think, just kind of embodies why Jaden Daniels is going to win the starting quarterback job, I think. Because situational football is something that you'd imagine the veteran has an advantage over the rookie. And there's been a couple times throughout this 3 weeks or so that whether it's a drill or whether it's something like what I'm about to describe, Marcus Mariota hasn't been up to the task. And a similar situation arises, and Jaden Daniels has a better outcome. And in a 2-minute drill today, the defense brought heat, ton of pressure, and Marcus is playing with the 2, so it's the 2-0 line. Who knows who screwed what up? But he throws with anticipation because he knows he's got to get the ball out, but he just lofts one out into space to a receiver, and Quan Martin jumps it and does make. I will say, if this winds up on social media, you're going to see it. If their Commanders, like team videographers, caught it, this will wind up on social media. Makes one of the most ridiculous interceptions you will see in your entire life. Not because it was a tremendously difficult play. In fact, it should have been a much simpler play. He should have just jumped up and caught it. But he reached out, he flew in, reached out with one hand, bobbled it, and then fumbled it behind his back, and then caught it with 2 hands, like behind his back. He was like bent over, Anthony. I'm gonna on the YouTube stream. I'm gonna switch to the wider camera here so people can see. He caught it like here, like behind his back. It's nuts.
That's insane.
Yeah, I hope that makes its way onto Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and all the places, because hot damn what a play that was. But the more realistic part of that, other than Quan Martin catching an interception behind his back and pick-sixing it, which hopefully is realistic during the regular season too, but the thing that you're just like, oh man, and I was standing with a couple of folks, and I just turned and went, that is the Marcus Mariota experience, where it's like, hey, I saw it, I read the blitz, I knew how to get the ball out, but I didn't do something smart with the ball. And if you're a veteran quarterback trying to hold off a rookie that's eventually going to come take your job, you've got to take care of the football. Like, you've got to, in 2-minute situations, make sure that you get the right amount of plays off or get the field goal unit on the field and give them a shot. Like, there's just too many things for a team that seems to emphasize a lot about situational football. There's too many times in these situational drills where Marcus Mariota isn't actually executing at a high level. And we call that a problem in the business, Anthony. We call that a problem in the business.
Yeah, it's definitely a problem. And I mean, I wasn't necessarily out there at practice.
Oh, you said I wasn't necessarily out there. You were not out here. Can't confirm.
I was not out there. But if he is having these kinds of problems, like, what about Sam Hardman, or what about who's the 4th string quarterback?
Well, Hartman's the fourth-string quarterback. Jeff Driscoll's the third.
string.
I mean, the thing is, like, those guys are not
Is that a
playing.
discussion? Or,
No.
okay.
I mean, the reason Mariota's here is not because he's a good player. And if he's playing, you're in trouble. But the same is true for Hartman and Driscoll. And, like, I don't know who. I don't think the difference, to be honest, between Driscoll and Mariota is that significant, except, like, as a player. They're different kinds of players. Although Driscoll's like a guy who's going to run a bunch, and Mariota definitely does that. But like Marcus is a better quarterback. But Marcus has played 70 plus. He started like 70 something games in this league, and so while he's not necessarily going to say like do what I do, or especially on the practice field the way he's playing right now, do what I do. He does bring a lot to offer. Like I mean, he is here to be a mentor coach type. To say, hey, I remember seeing this look when I was a younger player or last year, and this is, kind of what the thing is that the defense did that tipped me off that this blitz was coming, which when he can talk about that from being under center in a way that Cliff and Brian Johnson and David Blau and all the other offensive coaches can't, that's valuable. That's valuable to the room. But it's one thing to be able to see it. It's another to be able to do it. And the do it part is the problem for Marcus Mariota. Like I think Marcus is a good guy because Marcus can also be like, hey, Jalen did it this way last year, right? When he was backing up Jalen Hurts in Philly, and that's valuable. Obviously, Brian Johnson can say that too, but maybe it's a conversation that happened between the players. And Marcus has insight on that from what Jalen Hurts did and the way he, whether it saw a certain thing as a passer or even in the running game, Jalen would always look for this, and I thought that was really smart. And now I'm going to pass that along to you. So he's here to be a sayer, not a doer. And, Tiger Woods had swing coaches when he was at the peak of his powers. And it wasn't because they were better golfers than him. It's because they could tell him things that were helpful. And I think, Jaden Daniels, is he going to be ready quickly? Probably. Did we anticipate that on some level? Because that was one of the perks of him coming out as a 23-year-old, fifth-year senior, all the starting experience that he has. But him, by the end of spring, being an already better player than Mariota, I thought at least it would take training camp. But I think there's zero doubt that Daniels has had the better spring than Mariota has. Not even grading on the rookie second overall pick curve versus his fourth team, second overall pick many years ago curve.
Yeah, I mean, I was just curious whether or not, you start to have those discussions. But if we were a contending team, I think this would be a little worrisome. Just because we've seen a lot of playoff teams really sometimes have to rely on their backup quarterback. Sometimes,
and if you do,
we're not there right now.
Yeah, could Mariota win you a game? Maybe, probably. I mean, yes, he definitely could. A couple of bad practices doesn't mean that he couldn't go out there and throw for 220, run for 2 touchdowns, and hand the ball off to Brian Robinson a bunch and rely on the defense as long as he doesn't turn it over. Now, if he's got to play a bunch of games, you're not in great shape. But that's the reality of playing. With the there's not 32 good quarterbacks, so you don't get 2 of them. You're lucky if you have 1 of them, and it looks like the Commanders hopefully have 1 that's going to be around for a really long time. I think the other big thing, though, is the defensive side of it, and they just continue to create turnovers. They continue to pick off passes. They continue to react quickly, and it's really, as you'll hear Derek Forrest talk about with me coming up in a little bit, like Defo talked about Wagner, because I asked him specifically about Wagner, but he talked about how Chin is like this as well. Luvu, there's just a bunch of dudes that really know what's supposed to happen on any given play. And so some of the mental mistakes that put you in bad positions previously, or like Wagner will be like, hey, watch out for this. And if you know what's coming, defense is not that hard in the NFL. Just be where the quarterback thinks you're not going to be when he thinks you're not going to be there. When he's like, oh, this should be open right now, you go be there and you get the football. And so there's these things that Bobby Wagner and his immense knowledge of the game and guys like Luvu and Shin who have played a bunch of ball, they can just help these younger guys, the Defos, the Quans, Percy Butler, Dominique Hampton, Jamin. Like, they can help these guys be better football players because they take some of the thinking out of the game. For as much as football is about physicality and speed and, all that stuff, it's a decision-making sport. Your ability to decipher what is happening and get where you're supposed to be is the thing that drives your success. Now, if you're faster, you can get there faster, and that's helpful. And if you have more time to make the decision because you have the speed to make up for it. Physical traits don't matter. Obviously, if you can mess something up with a layer of physicality, that's helpful. And if you're, it's positionally based too. On the D line, like, if you just Aaron Donald somebody, then everything else doesn't matter. There's no decision to be made. I beat you in 1.8 seconds. Now the quarterback is on his back. And the mental decision that the receiver made to realize he needed to bend his route versus cover 2 is irrelevant because the quarterback's already dead. So there is, of course, the Mike Tyson, everyone's got a plan until they get hit in the face to element to football. But in space, on the outside, everywhere but the trenches, and there is elements of this in the trenches, it's just the ratio flips. It's a decision-making sport. And I think that the cleanliness with which these DBs are making decisions is a huge reason why they're able to create these turnovers. And you also see how on the play like the Mariota, to Quan Martin pick, you see how the pressure and the coverage marry. Quan doesn't have to worry about getting beat deep on that play. He knows it's a blitz, and he is waiting, and he jumps the route, and, he made it harder than it had to be, makes a spectacular play, but it's a pick six. That is how Deron Bland and Diggs and all these Dallas DBs got picks, is they took gambles because if the quarterback would try to double pump and the receiver hit a double move, like Micah Parsons was going to get home. So you see whether it's generated coverage or winning one-on-one, how the pressure marries with coverage and how that leads to turnovers because there's risk DBs can take that they can't take otherwise. When we get back, how can the Commanders generate pressure, especially when they have the worst edge group in the league? That's not me saying that. Mike Clay of ESPN dropped his positional group rankings. We'll focus in specifically on where the Commanders' defense ranked across the board next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, and we're live from Ashburn, where the Commanders completed day 2 of minicamp. Of course, always live as well on the Free Odyssey app and streaming on YouTube at the Team 980. I talked to Derek Forrest after practice. You'll hear that interview coming up just over 15 minutes from right now. Right now, though, we are going to get into the rankings released by ESPN's Mike Clay. Always does a really great job with his projections. So there's all kinds of data in this document that, Anthony, you sent a direct link to me, but I'm assuming that people can get this on ESPN.com?
Yes, they can.
So they do projections of games played and, their fantasy projections, does rushing, passing projections, which is interesting. So they project Jaden Daniels to play 15 games, Mariota 2. Jaden to throw for 3,400 yards, 16 touchdowns, 14 picks, 100 rushing attempts, 584 yards, 5 touchdowns, which is that feels pretty right, to be honest. They're almost 3,500 yards, 16 touchdowns, 14 picks,
Maybe
almost
a little
600
bit more touchdowns.
Maybe, but it's hard. It's hard for a rookie, man.
Yeah.
They do project Dax Milne to have 61 kickoff returns. I don't know why. Dax Milne's not making this roster. So there's that. Only a 985-yard season for Terry in the projections. That's interesting as well. 72 catches. I'll take the over on that. But anyway, that is – so they do this, and then they have like the kind of their unit grades. So that is where our eyes went, is breaking down the rankings of the units in terms of like quarterbacks, running backs, et cetera, et cetera. And so as I scroll down here, we have the Commanders not scoring well in some areas, scoring extremely well in others. So let's focus in on the defense. Maybe we'll get into the offense tomorrow. But on the interior of the defensive line, the Commanders rank 10th, which I feel like feels low, but let's see who else is above them. First, they've got your boys, Ant. They've got the Colts at 1. And I say they. This is Mike Clay's work, but I'm sure he works with some other folks on this. But DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart, Raekwon Davis, Tavon Bryan, and Eric Johnson. The Seahawks led by Leonard Williams and Jaron Reed. The Lions led by Alim McNeil and DJ Reader. The Falcons, Grady Jarrett, Kansas City, obviously Chris Jones. Baltimore Ravens, they got Matabuke back. Steelers, Cam Hayward, company. Packers, Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, etc. The Raiders, Christian Wilkins, new addition, John Jenkins, etc. And then the Commanders with John Allen, Deron Payne, Jazon Newton, John Ridgway, and Fadarian Mathis. I would put the Commanders way higher here, to be honest. Because while, sure, like Matabike is great, Cam Hayward is great, are any of the number 2 guys here as good as Deron Payne is if John Allen returns to form? And it's just, they weren't very good last year. And this is what happens, is you get judged based off what you did. What have you done for me lately? And last year wasn't very good. But I tend to think that in this defense with these coaches and everything going on here, that group next year will be ranked higher than 10.
Yeah, because, again, it's season projection. So if he's projecting Deron and John to have an okay year and to fall at 10, I guess that's his projections. But 2 years ago, this was one of the top defensive tackle duos in the league. Last year, they definitely did have a down year. Like, everybody's realized that. But this is a new year, new defense. And I think they're ready to, go out there and prove to everybody that they are, one of the best defensive tackle duos in the NFL. I think 10 is extremely low. You talk about the Falcons, you talk about the Lions, you talk all these teams. I got them in the top 3 easily.
Yeah,
Easily.
I would put top 5
The
very
coach is
safely.
very good, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Edge, Anthony, they are ranked 31 out of 32. And I do wonder, especially if these projections are slanted towards fantasy production, right? Do they think that there will be so much attention on those guys that they're not going to get sack numbers and tackle for loss and, whatever other defensive fantasy points that you get? Maybe, but still, like, them dudes are nasty on the inside. Outside, Dorrance Armstrong, Cleveland Ferrell, Dante Fowler, KJ Henry, Andre Jones. Only the Falcons with Lorenzo Carter, Zach Harrison, and a couple of others, our guy James Smith-Williams. Come on, don't do that to James. Are worse. Now, edge is a stacked position. Like, you'd think the Lions are way up there, right, with Aiden Hutchinson leading the crew. The Lions, he's got it 18th. So there's definitely, like, the Bears, with as good as Sweat was there last year, 20th. Sweat, DeMarcus Walker, etc. They're 20th. So it's a hard group. I mean, the Bills, Greg Rousseau, AJ Epinesa, Von Miller, former commander Casey Tuhill, they're 25th. Now, a lot of those guys are either had good years last year or terrible years in Von Miller's case. But still, like, it's a stacked position in a lot of ways. But 31st, man, that's rough. But I also, if your number one is Dorrance Armstrong, they don't have an impact pass rusher. I think Armstrong's a very solid player, but he was Dallas's 3 last year, and he's the 1 here.
I was about to say, do you think this is probably based off of just pure sack production? Because I feel like if you don't necessarily have a Joey Bosa, a Nick Bosa, these premier pass rushers in the league, you're probably going to blitz a lot, and sometimes the linebacker's going to take away, the safety's going to take away some of your pressure and your sacks. So maybe that's probably what it's based off of.
Maybe, but I do think, like, I think there's probably groups that, like, D-line coaches would certainly take, that would reorder, because, like, Cleveland Ferrell is not a premier pass rusher. He is a really hard edge setter. And that, like, playing the run is a really big deal. And if you don't need support and you can save your corners, like, especially when the corners are the ones here, at least one of them in particular, that perhaps struggles with some of the physicality out on the edge, that's super duper valuable. Meanwhile, on the other end of the rankings, Mike Clay at ESPN has the off-ball linebacker, the much maligned off-ball linebacker in Washington, D.C., the Commanders, the burgundy and gold-laden football team, as number 1. Bobby Wagner, Woo! Frankie Louvu, Jamin Davis, Mikael Walker, Jordan McGee, the rookie. They've got them as number 1 ahead of the Niners with Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Devondre Campbell on down the list. That feels like if Dre Greenlaw was healthy 100% coming off that Achilles that he suffered in the Super Bowl, that feels, I think, a little aggressive for me. Because I think Warner's the best linebacker in football, with all due respect to Bobby. I think Warner at this stage of their careers is better. I think Greenlaw is phenomenal. Louvu is real good. I don't know, man. But, like, no doubt Washington's top 5, and I don't think it's crazy that he's got him 1. Oh, what a difference a year makes.
I definitely agree. I definitely think Fred Warner is the best linebacker in football. But Dre Greenlaw is hurt. And the 49ers are still too, so I don't know. I think that still speaks volumes to
how good Fred Warner is.
And yeah.
As a linebacker unit, dang. Fred Warner is the number 2 linebacker in the NFL. That's kind of what that says. Last but not least, they got corners and safeties. Corners, Washington, back down we go. 30th out of 32. What I think is interesting is they list St. Juice, Forbes, Quan, Sainristil, Davis. And Quan's a safety, which I don't know if helps or hurts the cause. But they definitely have – like, corner's the biggest question mark on the team. Like, they might have 2 great players in St. Juice and Forbes. Like, their upsides are truly great players, they might have 2 total busts in those dudes. And we're just not going to know until we get in the season. Realistically, they'll probably play unevenly, and they'll have some really fantastic moments and some moments that make you want to pull your hair out and cost this team football games. But that is a position they need to invest in starting next offseason in a major way.
So you don't think they should do it this season
It's
at all?
too late.
Because there are some corners out there, though, Craig.
I mean, I guess they could go sign Gilmore. They could.
They were trying to get Steven Nelson before. Like, he was in the talks. I see, I think Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport, one of them tweeted out. But it seemed as though the Commanders were trying to get a veteran cornerback.
They might still. And maybe, I mean, look, if they can, go do it. I'm not opposed to that. But they definitely want to give these young guys a chance, at least in practice.
For sure.
And I think they'll probably give them, like, my guess is Dan Quinn and Steph. This is total reckless speculation. But I feel like DQ and Stephon Gilmore have talked, and he's like, look, I got this Forbes kid. I don't know what to do with him. This St. Juice kid seems like he should be good, but he never has caught a football in his life. I'm going to let them put pads on and practice for 3 days. And if they aren't kicking absolute you-know-what, you're going to be here. Got it? Stay in shape. Click. That's what I would do if I was DQ. Because I do want to give these young guys a chance. But I also don't want to have them, like, if I know, I've coached football long enough that if I know, I don't need to give them a chance in a game. Last but not least, safeties. Commanders with Derek Forrest, Jeremy Chin, Percy Butler, Jeremy Reeves, Dominique Hampton. Of course, Quan should be on there as well. They are at 22nd. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and the Eagles are right above them. Justin Reed and the Chiefs are right below them. This is another really good position. Like, I mean, you got dudes that are really, in like units that are pretty solid down in the 20s here. Like,
where are the Ravens at?
The Ravens are 1 with Marcus Williams,
okay,
Kyle Hamilton,
sure.
and company.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, the Dolphins with Javon Holland are 2. Vikings somehow still at 3. Harrison Smith is 4,000 years old, and he's still top 5 unit in the league.
Wow.
The Browns are 5, Delpit and Juan Thornhill. Like, there's obviously some really, really fantastic units in the league here. But I do think that, like, I look at 21, 22, 23, Philadelphia, Washington, Kansas City, and I go, I can win with those safety units.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, then again, Philly was terrible at that position last year. So we'll see if they can turn around with Gardner-Johnson back in the fold. All right. When we get back, speaking of safeties, my conversation with Commanders safety Derek Forrest. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Coming up at 5 o'clock, I do believe Mitch Tishler is going to stop by, although I should probably find him because I don't see him here. Hopefully he's done with his podcast with JP, but I do believe Mitch Tishler is swinging through. But coming up at 5:30, we're talking NBA Finals. And then later on in the show, our Pick 6 at 6 and Commanders defensive line coach, Daryl Tap. Right now, though, I was able to catch up after practice with Commanders safety Derek Forrest, and this is how that conversation went.
Two days, but last couple of weeks been like for you?
Oh, it's been great, man. Coming in, getting around, the coaching staff, learning and just having fun, man, getting to know each other. So it's been great.
The process of getting to know each other has been really emphasized by the coaching staff. What have you guys actually been doing to get to know each other?
A lot of different things, man. When we first got here, we just sat in the rooms and we went over presentations about our lives. And then after that, it went to team activities, to boot camps with military coaches, man. And then from there, we started having our own events with each other, our position groups. And, it's really about growing. If our brotherhood is strong, man, I know nothing going to be able to stop us.
What was something you learned about one of your teammates that made you, I don't say look at him differently, but kind of see him?
Something I learned about one of my teammates that made me see them. Let's see. Man. I want to say somebody new. I've been a lot of these guys for 4 years. I say just being around Chin, man, just getting to know his personality and just seeing his leadership, man. It's just great, being able to learn from guys, that have been able to do it, and he just got paid, man. So I'm great. Grateful to have him around.
With Derek Forrest here on the Team 980. Obviously, talk about a guy who's been around and seen some things, Bobby Wagner. What's it like having a voice? I'll save off the field separate for a second, but on the field, what does he bring that changes your defense?
Man, he brings it's like if you could put a gold medal on the field, he's the gold medal, man. He communicates, he sees things before they happen, and he can get everybody lined up and get them where they need to be, man. So it's just great having him out there.
Is there ever a time that he says something and you're just like, how did you know that?
Definitely. When I first started playing dime and stuff, I'll be lining up. He'll be telling me hey, you got this, you got that, and I'm like, man, thank you. You're making my life so much easier.
All right, and then off the field, having a vet like that in the building, because this has been a fairly young team the past couple of years. There haven't been those. I don't know the last Hall of Famer that walked through these doors since Trent left. Yeah. But a guy that, as he's playing, that that's in his future. Mm-hmm. So what's it been like to have him around the building? What are some of the things you learned from him off the field?
The way that he goes about things, man. The way that he gets in here early, take care of his body. He works out early in the morning, and then he just goes throughout his day with a routine, man, and that's important. He's in year, 14, 15, man, and he's still doing great. So just learning his routine and how to take care of your body and come into every day ready to work.
For you guys in the secondary, there's been a lot of talk, obviously, as we've been able to see the mixing and matching. It seems like you have 1,000 different personnel groupings. I don't know how many it actually is, but when you compare it to the defense that you've been in, for you, it's the same defense your whole career. So just because it's the one to compare it against, I'm not trying to make you, take shots. But how different is it in terms of just understanding who's on the field, all the different personnel groupings, the responsibilities from what you were doing to what it is now?
I just got a lot more roles now, so I'm going closer to the line of scrimmage. I can be playing star if we're in Buffalo, and Chin's not in, and we're doing a lot of different things. So it's really about learning the full defense and then knowing how to communicate when you're in that spot.
Is that something that's different in the way it's coached, that you feel like you have to know what everybody's doing maybe than just what you were doing?
Not really, but it's just more being attention to detail because it's a new system. I can't come out here and BS because I know it like the back of my hand. I'm still learning things as I'm going, man, and it's just been great getting in here and just picking people's brains.
Last thing for you real quick. I know one thing that safeties talk about a lot is the ability to kind of see the field from that back. If you're 30 yards off the line of scrimmage, you can see everything. Yeah. Now being down in the box, how is that like, are you
30 seconds.
like Bobby, who had played in the box, Frankie, whoever it is, to understand what you're supposed to be looking for that close?
Oh, absolutely. Even Louvu, man, he's a great mentor for me when I get down there, and it's just really learning where you need to be. And on each plays, the offensive line might do different things, the tight ends might do different things, running back might go this way, go that way, and just learning how to make your fits off of that, and learning how to do your job responsibility off of that.
Derek, appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, that is Derek Forrest with me after practice, Commander Safety. And one thing that I'll just kind of postscript here, Anthony, is the last 2 days I've had the chance to talk to Luke McCaffrey and to Derek Forrest. And it has been, like, noticeable enough that it struck me that I almost asked Derek about it too, but the smile on his face, and also Jaden Daniels is the same way at the podium. Terry, same way at the podium. These guys are having a blast. And I don't know if that turns into a better culture and a better culture turns into wins this year. I do know it will help in the long term. I 100% know that you want a program where guys in a place to work. Just think of your own office, right? And rarely do I think pro sports and regular offices are comparable, but in this way they are, because we're talking about the human side of it. If people aren't there to do good work and aren't excited about showing up, you're not going to get the best out of them. Ultimately, talent wins. You need to have talent. And we just talked about some of the position groups where the talent is not up to where they want to get it, because this is going to be a multi-year rebuild off a team that was 4-13 last year. But they are doing a phenomenal job of getting the most out of guys, and part of it is because they genuinely enjoy coming to work, and that radiates off of them, even after hard practice in hot weather in the middle of June. So that's cool. Hooray, fun. And do you have?
I think it's yeah. I was about to say, even me, like, I still play flag football, and we have practices.
Oh, I thought you were going to say.
I love going to practice.
I thought you were going to say how much fun you have coming to work with me every day on the Hoffman show. I mean,
hey, look, I always have a smile on my face. I'm always excited. Oh, why are you getting so close to the camera?
I'm just looking.
Yes, Craig. I enjoy coming to work every day. Look, I'm smiling right now.
Same, Anthony.
I'm smiling right now.
Same, Anthony. Love it so much that I haven't shown up at that office in 2 days, and I'm here.
Oh, no.
Just kidding. Someone's got to do the work on person. Someone's got to be the boots on the ground. I mean, it's got to be me. It's got to be me.
Well, I hope to see you tomorrow.
I'll be there
or Friday. One of these days.
I'll be there tomorrow. Don't push it on Friday. I'm definitely working from home. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, Mitch Tishler on the phone, actually. Mitch had to get out of town in terms of being here in Ashburn, but spent a good bit of practice with Mitch, and now we'll recap it. Some of the stuff we said to each other standing on the sideline for you, into microphones/telephones. Next, it's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 and always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. We're going to hopefully catch up with Mitch Tishler. We're going to have to see if Mitch can do a different time here in a few minutes, because I just got a text from the Commanders that Daryl Tap can actually join us in a moment. So Daryl Tap, the defensive line coach, is on his way over. Of course, the former Commanders player, longtime defensive tackle in the league, now their D-line coach. And DT is going to come over and chat with us for 10 minutes or so here in a few minutes. So while we wait for him, rain delay theater. That's what we're going to do here. Actually, no, I'll talk about the D-line itself. And I think it's such an interesting unit because so many of the modern defensive lines in the NFL are built from the outside in. They are built around edge rushers, and then obviously you have defensive tackles that are space eaters and do the things that they need to do tactically to help those edge rushers eat. But this is a defensive line unit that is going to get its pass rush juice from the inside. And you saw that today even. There was a play where Jaden Daniels had to bail out of pressure, and he talked about it after practice. He's like, JP actually asked a really good question, which is, was there any, or has there been any point where, this has felt really fast for you? And he's like, not comes off to my head. There was this play today where John Allen and Daron Payne got in the backfield real quick, and you're like, damn, that's fast. So it's an interesting group, and we're live, but we're rolling by the seat of our pants here today, which is really how this radio show goes often. Daryl Tap sits down with us here in Ashburn. DT, Craig Hoffman, nice to meet you.
Likewise, man.
Appreciate you. Get that mic down. It might have to fold underneath. Here we go. Here, tell you what, we'll go that way, and then
This year.
bang, bang. There we go. I'll turn the camera, and people get to see all this because this is the beauty of live radio. Somehow this camera is angled that I look like a bigger human than you. Just for the record, that is absolutely not true. What's up, man? How's coaching under Dan Quinn so far the last couple of weeks?
Amazing. I played for Coach Quinn when I was in Seattle in 2009, and he's still the same person then that he is now. So it's been amazing to be working with him and Coach Witt and the staff they put together. Like, it's been a really good experience so far.
What is different working for Dan versus playing for Dan? Like, you're in different meetings, right? You're in player meetings as a player. He's the DC. It's different. He's the head coach now. But you get in those coaching meetings. What's different? What side of him do you get to see, or knowledge base or whatever that you get to see as a coach versus when you played under him?
Well, that's the unique thing. Like, he's completely transparent. So the same person he was as a coach, as a player, is the same person he is as a coach, as a colleague. Like, he has done an exceptional job being the same person. The person that you see on a day-to-day basis when he does media and interacting with the players and coach is the exact same thing I see every day. So you know what they expect as a coach, you know what they expect as a player. Even keel, he's going to address the things you need to get better at. He's going to praise the things that you do good. Like, so he's created a really good environment to work under, and that's good or bad. Like, things going to go bad during the season. Like I said, as a player, I knew that working with Coach Q, but he's always the same person, always going to lift you up, get those things corrected, and then continue on the same path.
Dan's been in the public spotlight for a long time. Joe, it's newer for him.
Yep.
What's it like? There's an intensity to him when we interact with him.
Oh, yeah.
I'd imagine he just seems like an intense person.
Yeah.
I'm sure he has moments that are where it's turned down a little bit. I'd hope so. Otherwise, man, what a high stress life. But what's Joe like, and what's your background with him, getting to know him these last couple weeks and months?
Coach Witt is definitely an intense guy, but it's all intentional what he's trying to get accomplished. This man's coached in the league for 20-plus years, and this is his first opportunity to be able to run his own ship. So he's not letting anything slide by. He's uncovering every rock, trying to find any hidden detail to make us that much better on a day-in, day-out basis. And, like, working with him, I'm in the same boat. First-time D-line coach, and I'm doing the exact same thing. He's leading the ship based off of the directions that Coach Q has set in place. So, like I said, it's a really cool dynamic to be working with those two individuals as well as the rest of the staff they've put together. Like, everything was intentional when Coach Quinn was building the full staff and when Coach Witt was putting together the staff that was working with him.
No doubt. Daryl Tap is with us, defensive line coach for the Commanders, here on the Hoffman Show. While I was killing time from the start of the segment till you sat down, I was talking about your group a little bit. I think it's such an interesting group from a coaching perspective, schematically, tactically. I know there's only so much you can say, but a lot of D-lines are built from the outside in. Like, you have that money on the outside, high draft picks. It's our studs are on the edges. We're trying to get those guys. This group is built from the inside out. Yeah. John and Duran are the money makers, both literally and figuratively.
No doubt.
How does that change what you guys do in as much detail as you feel comfortable discussing?
Yeah, no, it doesn't really change. Like, you always have to attack any given situation with what the ingredients that you have. And for us, we have two dynamic, stout, athletic, run stopper, pass rushing D tackles in the middle, and John Allen and Deron Payne. So we're doing things to help accentuate those guys' talents and to get everybody on page. But defensive line starts with those two animals that we got inside, which has been amazing to be around and see what they can truly do on a day-in, day-out basis.
I know that Dan has talked with a lot of basketball coaches over the years, and some of the concepts of positionless basketball, which I'd assume is a lot of matchup exploitation, finding out what guys do well. Does that stuff ever come up specifically where he's like, I learned this from Steve Kerr or whoever he does? Or is it just kind of an understanding as you guys built this defense that this is core to who we are?
No, this is definitely core to who we are. And like I said, I've experienced that playing for Coach Q back in Seattle. You can't be a one-trick pony working with Coach Quinn. He's going to do whatever he can to put you in a situation to be successful. And then just understanding how the NFL is. This isn't college anymore where you dress everybody. On game day, we're dressing 8 to 10 guys as far as D-line wise, anywhere in between. And things happen throughout the course of a game where the guy may cramp up or a guy may have an equipment issue. And a guy that's kind of pegged to be a 3 technique now has to play end, or end has to play 2-eye. So we have to be extremely interchangeable on the D-line. And that's what we're doing here, not putting anybody in just one specific area. You have to be interchangeable. You got to understand the defensive scheme, what we're trying to get accomplished. And the D-line is doing a great job starting with Deron and John. They've really been leading this group, so it's been a joy to work with those guys.
What about the two guys behind them? Obviously, we know Jazan is injured right now, but I'm talking about Big Phil and John Ridgeway.
No doubt about it.
What have you seen from them so far?
Grinders. They are getting themselves in the best possible shape they can be in because their two big brothers in John Deron have already set the standard for what you can do on this team with this area and in this league. And those guys have the same type talents. So we're stressing those guys to continue to grind, to continue to work, to continue to push that red line a little bit further so that when we get to training camp and get to the game that they got more in the tank than they even expected. So they're grinding, working their tails off. Those guys have some stuff to them, man. It's been good to see.
The top 3 guys on the edge, I think, I don't think it's a wild guess to say it's going to be the 3 vets that you brought in.
Yeah.
What have you seen from the young guys behind them? Has anybody really surprised you stood out of the KJ Henrys, the Andre Joneses, some of those younger guys that are battling for the rest of the spots in that group?
Yeah, so to touch on it once again, everything here has been done intentional, meaning the guys that he brought in for the coaching staff and the guys that he brought in for the roster, it's all been by design. With those 2 guys up front, Deron and John, they're leading the way for Phil and Ridgeway, and then even Jerzon being in meetings every day. They're leading the way as far as how to attack, how to be successful in this league, as far as your preparation, how you attack practice, how you attack meetings each and every day. And those 3 guys that we've signed, as far as Cleveland Farrell, Dorrance Armstrong, and Dante Fowler, are doing the exact same thing for the end. So KJ Henry and Andre Jones and Jalen Harris and Javonte Jean-Baptiste, who we drafted, they're all learning how to be professionals in this league and play at a high level and what that means each and every day from meetings to practice by following those 3 old cats. So it's a really good dynamic. Nobody's really surprised me. I remember evaluating all these guys in the process when I was in San Fran and admiring those guys' talent from afar. So I say the biggest thing that's been the coolest thing to see as far as the D-line is just the chemistry that those guys have for one another, the respect they have. They're to the point now where they understand if I don't take care of my job, then you can't handle your job. And the deeper meaning of that, then you can't provide for your family or significant other because I'm not handling my part of the job. So that respect those guys have is going all the way across the D line, and that's probably been the most the coolest thing to see just on a day in, day out basis.
A few more minutes with Daryl Tap joining us here live in Ashburn on the Hoffman Show. You played here once upon a time. Outside of the fact that there's a lot of burgundy and gold still painted on the walls, does this organization remotely look familiar to you?
No. it's gone a complete 180, and it's cool to see. As a player, you're always worried about what you got to do. You got your blinders on, worried about what you got to do, and kind of think 2-3 steps ahead because you could be here today, gone tomorrow. So coming back in this role now you get to see a broad scope of what's going on, and you really start to witness everything that's changed, hopefully for the better. And it's just reinvigorated everybody around the facility, everybody around the area, because I'm a Virginia kid. So it's so cool to see. So it's been really good being able to come to work and work in the circumstances. And now the next step is to make sure these guys handle these next 35, 40 days away. And then when we come to training camp, we're on fire, ready to go into the season.
What's your message to your guys as they leave for these 35, 40 days? I know these are like the scariest 35, 40 days on the calendar for coaches. You just don't want to get a call about anybody.
No doubt. But like I said, it goes back to that intentional thing as far as the guys that we signed in free agency, the guys that are on this team, understanding what those guys are all about. So I honestly have no concerns that these guys are going to handle their time away the right way, knowing the character of these young men, understanding who they're playing for and what their why is. Like, I'm not concerned at all. They're still a little bit there just because you don't see them, but I am not concerned. I think those guys are going to go out there and handle their business as far as getting themselves ready to have an amazing training camp and an amazing season. And when they have their time away, have that time with the family before we get back and get on the submarine for the season.
All right, last thing for you, just a big, wide coaching topic. This is something I want to talk about later in the show. And I got a coach on the show, so I got to ask. Christy Sides, who is the coach of the Indiana Fever, Caitlin Clark's coach, the other night after a game said you can't coach effort. And I think that's incorrect. That phrase, you can't coach effort. Do you agree with that?
I do not.
How do you coach effort?
Not for me. For her, in her world, she has it. I know nothing about basketball world from that standpoint. But from the NFL perspective, when I'm working with guys that are 250 on up to 320 pounds, I have to stress effort. Because it's so easy to say that, hey, this guy's a professional, he should know what effort looks like. Well, everybody's understanding of effort is different. Your understanding of effort is completely different than mine. So we both do our effort on the field as far as running to the ball or attacking. You're right and I'm right. But unless there's a standard set, there can't be a standard met.
That's the thing. Because, like, I feel like you guys coach effort all the time.
No doubt.
Like, it's not like you can't coach effort. It's actually, you should always be coaching effort because effort's part of the standard.
Right. But it depends on the world that we're living in. Like I said, for her, I'll never discredit her. She's done amazing stuff.
She's a fantastically smart coach.
No
a long-time
doubt.
assistant. He's earned a head coaching job. But that quote, because a lot of coaches say that.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't coach effort. And I'm like, I think that's an indictment of you as a coach. But that's my job, to be the sports talk radio guy talking about that. But I was like, I got a coach on the show. I'm going to ask. All right, so well, I'll save the rest of that conversation for later when you're not here and not rope you into any trouble. Daryl, appreciate the time, man.
No problem.
Appreciate you swinging by.
No doubt.
Daryl Tap with us here on the Hoffman Show. Be back reacting to that, and we'll see if we can catch up with Tishler here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Huge thanks to Daryl Tap for swinging through, and a huge thanks to Mitch Tishler for being flexible with us. He joins us now on the phone. Mitchell, hello, and thank you, and I'm sorry about that, but all of a sudden they were like, Daryl can come now, and you know how that goes around here.
Oh, certainly, and that Daryl Tap interview was a ton of fun to listen to. So always good to hear him out. Always good to hear that stuff.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into the coaching effort thing later in the show. Honestly, that's all I've wanted to talk about today. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm talking about the day that Jaden Daniels had and all of that stuff. But you can't coach effort? Come on, you can coach effort. You coach JP every single day on the podcast, Mitch.
Listen, you're right. You can't coach effort, but the fact that everyone's pretty much all bought in is pretty dang impressive. I mean, from the coaching staff and that, free practice, run through the bag, you see all of those guys jumping up and down and being involved in it. And, it transfers onto the field. They were doing the field goal kicking today, and the entire offense and defense, John Allen was, 1 inch behind the kicker, screaming in his ear, all giving him a hard time, trying to give him a game day look. And having guys, willing to, play the game and be involved in practice. John Allen's not involved in special teams, but he's out there right in the middle of it with the rest of the guys, giving him a real game-like look, and it's fun to see.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Really, really fun to see, and they did a phenomenal job today of kind of doing that, giving that look. And hey, that kicker that's barely on the team, they got him to make the field goal, walking off. So we love that. Nobody cares about the kicker. Well, eventually people will care about the kicker. We're going to talk about the quarterback. Mitchell, 2 days in a row, Jaden Daniels is QB1. How significant do we think that is at this point in the calendar? I mean, I guess if Mariota's the guy tomorrow, then who cares? But how many days in a row does Jaden Daniels have to be QB1 before we go, hey guys, I think Jaden Daniels is QB1?
I think Jaden Daniels is QB1. I mean, I think even when Marcus Mariota was taking those first reps, we knew that Jaden was going to eventually take over, and I think we've seen it. And I think it adds to it that Marcus Mariota hasn't had a particularly good mini camp. But certainly it hasn't all been perfect, but he's a young quarterback, and that's kind of the way that things go with young quarterbacks. But the ball doesn't hit the ground very often when he's in there, and more so you just see him, placing the ball so nicely for these receivers and running backs and tight ends. He gets the ball to them in places where they can make the catch and turn it upfield and make a play. Very rarely do you see these guys breaking stride or having to reach back for balls. And, I think that's going to be a big part of this offense because we know Cliff Kingsbury wants to, spread the field both horizontally and vertically, but he wants to get the ball out quickly and get the ball into his playmakers' hands. And Jaden's done a really good job of that. And then on the other side of it, what's, maybe even more impressive to me is watching Jaden work within the pocket. You're not getting a real pass rush because the guys aren't in full pads, but when he's rolling out, he's so accurate on the move with the football, and the ball comes out so quickly. It's just kind of a flick of the wrist, and it's been impressive to watch. And certainly the balls along the sidelines have been the ones that have been the most impressive because he does such a good job of keeping the ball up and away from any DB that might be challenging a receiver, and basically puts the ball up in a place where either his guy's going to make the play or no one is at all.
Totally. And you and I were talking about this on the sideline today. His improv ability, I think, may have been underrated during the draft process, in part because Caleb Williams is one of the great improvers we've ever seen as a prospect, and that was the guy that was going ahead of him. And then Drake May, his highlights were so high as an improv guy. Like he just can make throws that are extraordinarily rare, that Jaden flicking a ball, rolling to his right 40 yards accurately, and like you said, with great trajectory up and away, it's like, yeah, those other guys can do that too, but it's like that's the thing that you actually need in the NFL. You actually need to be able to make that throw, and sure, 3 times a year is Drake May going to throw the ball 60 yards across his body, and one of those will be a touchdown? Great, but like that doesn't overcome the basic stuff that Drake struggles with, and as a result, like that, the highlight tapes kind of get compared, and I do kind of wonder if we undersold, or it was undersold to us, however you want to look at it, the improv ability that Jaden has beyond the scrambling ability as a runner.
Well, and I think that's all part of it. When you look at the pre-draft process, the big highlight plays are the ones where he tucks it and runs for 40 yards and, is dusting SEC DBs down the field as he's getting into the end zone. But, the most important plays that you need to see are kind of those improv plays when you're able to take it from 1st and 10 to 2nd and 5 instead of 2nd and 10 or 2nd and 13 if you're going to take a sack. And, obviously, again, no pads, so you only take so much away from it. But we saw the highlight plays of him tucking and running. I think folks fell in love with his speed. I think that's where a lot of the kind of RG3 comparisons came from, the fact that he can run so well. But he runs as a last resort. And to me, that's impressive because he's a quarterback that has his head on his shoulders. And when he's spinning out of the pocket and running or getting out of the pocket, he's looking to still make a play downfield with his arms. And only as a last resort is he then tucking it and trying to run. And the fact that he's able to make so many plays on the move, and whether it's rolling to his right, with his arm angle, or to the left, having to throw across his body, he's able to get himself into a good throwing position, deliver the ball, in the right place with a good velocity on it. I mean, Terry McLaurin talked about it a little bit yesterday about how he's been working with the receivers to, get their heads turned around quickly on these routes because, other quarterbacks might wait for a receiver to clear and get into the open portion of the field, whether it's a zone or a man or whatever it may be, whereas Jaden is more willing to throw him open. And, you hear that in the NFL a lot, and I think it's hard for kind of a casual fan maybe to quantify what a quarterback is throwing a receiver open. But I think the more that we get to watch Jaden, I think the more that you're going to be able to conceptualize and understand, the fact that if he's throwing that, an in-breaker to Terry and he's feathering it over a linebacker in front of a safety before Terry gets that open, portion of the zone, he gives Terry an opportunity to beat everybody there, catch the ball, and go. And it's been impressive to watch. And you've seen a lot of these plays, guys catch the ball and they're able to turn the ball upfield and they're able to, get another 10, 15 yards before a defender is able to touch them or tag them up. And so, I've really liked what I've seen from him, and we've seen it more and more as the offseason has progressed. And I think that's an important step, seeing kind of that day-to-day improvement, the 1% better each day.
No doubt. Mitch Tishler, co-host of the Beltway Football Podcast, with us here on the Hoffman Show. We saw some mix-up on the O-line today, Mitch. Brandon Coleman out at left tackle, Michael Dieter at left guard. My guess is they did the Dieter at left guard thing so that Nick Allegretti could get reps at center with the twos as they cross-train everybody, and they wanted Allegretti to get some reps at center. But what do we make of that when Ricky Stromberg is still floating around, a third-round pick just last year?
Yeah, I think you saw a lot today was about trying to get guys in different positions. During OTAs, we saw a couple times Cornelius Lucas would be at left tackle with the first group, and then when they went to the second group O-line, Big Luke would go over and play right tackle. And I think they're trying to get him some work on both sides, but ultimately, I think that kind of wears you out when he's the starting left tackle and then has to go over and play second team right tackle. So I think it was a little bit of preservation early on in camp, getting Brandon Coleman that work over on the left side. I think when we get to training camp, we're going to see Cornelius Lucas with the first team offensive line at least to start, and it'll be an opportunity for Brandon Coleman to work his way in there. But certainly when you talk about the center position and the fact that Ricky Stromberg is still working pretty strongly with the threes and hasn't really made a lot of move up. We've seen Michael Dieter take some center snaps, Nick Allegretti today. I just think it speaks to kind of the stunting of Stromberg's growth that he had last year. And it's unfortunate, but it's a very real thing. I mean, he was a center his entire college career. And, last year I talked to him when they started working with him at guard, and Ricky was like, hey, man, I haven't really taken real reps at guard since high school. And the fact that they immediately kind of moved him over to guard and had him start taking the work there stunted his growth as a center and as a football player, because he was learning essentially a brand new position. And I think we're seeing that now where, he's coming off injury, plus he's coming off a year where he didn't get the the growth and the learning that you would have hoped that he would have had. And I think it's taken him a little time to make some hay here. But certainly, there's some comfortability, I guess, with guys like Michael Dieter and Nick Allegretti, who have, been in the NFL a little bit longer, played a couple different positions. They've shown that they can be starters, that they can be backups, that they can play guard and center. And, I think much like we talk about Brandon Coleman, trying to work his way into that, starting left tackle role, I think Ricky Stromberg is going to be trying to work hard to work into that backup center role. And ultimately, it's going to be interesting to see how this O-line plays out, because you have a pretty good idea of who probably 9 of the 10 O-linemen are. And there's going to be a battle at the back with a lot of names that Commanders fans have gotten to know. Chris Paul, Ricky Stromberg, Mason Brooks, Jaden Daniels. Those are all guys that are going to be fighting for probably that last O-line spot, on this roster. And I think that O-line is one position where you're going to see it, but I think across the board, you're going to see some draft picks in the last 2-3 years, that fans obviously were hoping to that would, turn into good players, but ultimately haven't really done a lot, are going to be fighting for a spot on this roster. And ultimately, that's a good thing. I think, if you're able to cut good players, that puts you in that means your roster is starting to show a little bit of depth to it. You're starting to get a little bit deeper. You're starting to get to a situation where if one guy gets hurt, it doesn't ruin the entire team. So, Ricky Stromberg is going to have a lot of work to do to fight his way onto this roster. But, it's ultimately, I think, comes from some of the mismanagement that he saw early in his career.
What have you made of Coleman so far, and what did you see from him today? He's able to get out in space a little bit. I think you see the athleticism. Also, I was within like 10 feet of the dude yesterday. That's a big freaking man. That is a large human being. But what have you seen from Brandon Coleman, left tackle and otherwise so far?
He is a very big body. He's super quick. I mean, the RAS score stuff wasn't lying. When we see him on the field, you see that lateral movement, and it's strong. I think, the big thing is going to be when they put pads on and they can rush for real, you get a feel if his punch can be, in concert with his feet, and he can keep his balance and use that athleticism to help kind of stonewall some of these edge rushers. But he's looked pretty good. I mean, again, there's only so much you can really tell on an O-lineman without pads on. He did have one false start today at practice, but ultimately, I think as a whole, he's looked good. I think he's shown that, that athleticism isn't just kind of gym athleticism, it's football athleticism, and you see it on the football field. And I think that, he's got a really good base to start with. I think that, talking to Cornelius Lucas and some of the other O-linemen as they've been coming off the field, they're excited about what he can be, because he does show kind of those early things that you want to see, from left tackles, from, athletic guys. And it'll be, once they put pads on, to see how he handles himself, when he takes a bull rush, or, how he's able to convert some of that athleticism into play strength.
We all know that the false start that he had today was John Keim's fault, though, Mitch. We were watching him. We're like, all right, let's watch Coleman on this rep. And as soon as we did, when Keim's the one who said it, jumped off sides. So the false start wasn't even his fault. It was Keim's.
Oh, yeah, there's no one else to blame but Keim. But you mentioned kind of him getting downfield. That first play of 11-on-11 was a quick little screen pass to the right. And as I believe it was Austin Eckler was making his way downfield, Brandon Coleman was step for step with him as he was trying to get out in front of him to make blocks. And for me, that's the kind of stuff that I love to see from my O-linemen. Nick Gates obviously wasn't the center that everyone had hoped that he would be. But the one thing that I really liked that he did was he was a guy that blocked kind of through the echo of the whistle, and particularly downfield. Whenever they ran any sort of screen or quick game, he was always looking to pick off somebody at the end of those plays. And I think that, that's how you can turn a 20-yard play into a 60-yard touchdown, when you get those big guys out front. And between him and Sam Cosmi and Tyler Biadasz, I mean, there's some solid athleticism on this O-line. And particularly with the amount of quick game that we know Cliff Kingsbury is going to run, I think there's going to be some opportunities for those guys to get downfield and get a couple pancakes on some smaller guys.
No, I think that's a great point, Mitch. And actually, I think it's why when people discount Trent Scott as a potential placeholder, not just Cornelius Lucas at left tackle, I think you might be underselling that. We've seen Trent Scott run with the one some this spring, and it's because he's more athletic. Like, Lucas is a gigantic human who is relatively stationary. He's a very good pass blocker. He's very hard to beat because he's a mountain of a man to get around. He's got good enough feet in the phone booth, good enough hands, and he's obviously strong as hell because he's 6'8" and 340 pounds or whatever he is. But getting him out in space is kind of, I don't want to say it's a non-starter, but it's certainly not his specialty, and I think is the kind of thing that has kept him more of a swing tackle role versus being someone that is coveted as a starter, despite the fact that he's been in the league for quite a number of years now. And so if Coleman can win that spot, you get the best of both worlds. You get the gigantic human who's hard to pass rush and can also move. But I do wonder if Scott winds up winning the job week one if they think Coleman's not ready yet because of the fact that Cliff wants to get guys out in space and that is not Lucas's specialty.
Yeah, I think Lucas is a little bit more of a throwback tackle. I mean, we can think back to the days that Trent Williams was here, and he was one of the few tackles that was in the NFL at that time that was getting out downfield to go, get linebackers and get DBs in the screen game. Because quite frankly, that wasn't what tackles were particularly asked to do. Even rewinding 5-10 years in the NFL. But nowadays, you're seeing a lot more teams use a lot of that quick game and using those offensive linemen to get out front. And, yeah, that is something that I do think Brandon Coleman has an edge over Cornelius Lucas at. However, he's got to prove that he can be the mountain of a man of a pass blocker that Lucas is because, quite frankly, the most important thing is going to be protecting Jaden Daniels' blind side. And you need somebody who works well in the phone booth and can be a guy that can be a stalwart in the pass game. And if Brandon Coleman can't show that right away, I think that's really the pathway for Big Luke to be your early season starter. And that might be something that Coleman has to kind of mature his way into and learn along the way. So I do think there's a bright future for Brandon Coleman, but I don't think fans should be expecting necessarily that week one he's going to be that guy on the left side. I do think that Cornelius Lucas and his veteran savvy and ability to pass block is going to prove to be an important weapon for this team.
No doubt. Last thing for Mitch Tishler, of course, co-host of the Beltway Football Podcast with J.P. Finley, is this. Mitch, we have seen a lot of defensive coordinators go through here since I got here in 2015. You've been around covering this team longer than I have. You have seen even more defensive coordinators. What is it about the way that Joe Witt has these guys going that there are 2 to 3 interceptions per practice without fail? I know some of that is like, well, Marcus Mariota's throwing and he lofted the ball, and then Quan did a ridiculous thing where he caught the ball behind his back ultimately. And like some of that is just the quarterback play. You have a young quarterback and a guy who can be a little turnover prone to Mariota. But we know that that's what this defense has been everywhere it's been with Quinn and Witt. What is it that you see that you think is the difference, even with some of the same players being far more productive than they have been in past years?
Yeah, I mean, what I love about Joe Witt is the same thing that I loved about Eric Bieniemy last year. I mean, I love that old school, hard coaching, enthusiastic, kind of yelling. I think the difference, though, between a guy like Bieniemy and Joe Witt, at least through a month of off-season, no shorts and T-shirts practices, is that you see Witt, is intense and yelling and on these guys, but he's also teaching. He's also pulling these guys off to the side and working with them. And that starts with, the guys up front. You see him, working with John Ridgeway and guys like Fedarian Mathis as they're coming off the field, and it works his way back through the entire defense. You see him with Jamin and the linebackers. You see him with Emmanuel Forbes and the DBs. And I like that he's willing to kind of get involved with every level of the defense and is so kind of in their faces in practice, but also kind of teaching. Whereas Eric Bieniemy was a super loud voice, and I think he was more of at least I hope, he was more of a teaching behind the scenes, but you didn't see him do a ton of teaching on the practice field. It was more, here, do this, do that, what are you doing, and stuff. And so I really like seeing kind of across the group as a defense, the coaching staff, seeing them doing a lot of on-field coaching, which, under the Jack Del Rio, Eric Bieniemy, Ron Rivera group, you didn't see a ton of on-field coaching. You saw, them kind of getting through practice and then they would use that film study time to I guess, make their teaching points. But to the interceptions, obviously the Quan Martin interception today was incredible and a ton of fun and very cool. But as well as anyone, when you go through these OTA and minicamp practices, the first team offense goes out there, they run 5 to 10 plays. Then the second team offense goes out, they run the same 5 to 10 plays. Third team, the same 5 to 10 plays. And especially as you get to that second and third string, defense, you have guys who are trying to make rosters and trying to, stand out. And so I think you see some guys play some of these plays not as real life as you might. You see guys jumping routes a little bit quicker than they probably would in a game because they don't know what's coming. But at the end of the day, that's been the hallmark of Dan Quinn and Joe Witt, is creating defenses that create turnovers. And I think that I'm hoping that philosophy and the way that they use their secondary and DBs are going to help out guys like Emmanuel Forbes and CSJ a whole lot in terms of, concentrating or getting them to be in the right position to make the plays that we know they're capable of making.
The ultimate example of what you just talked about was Will Compton. Will used to have someone give him the practice script because he was like, I am going to make plays. I don't care if I'm basically cheating. I work smarter, not harder. And he would get the practice script, and I'll be damned if he didn't find his way onto the NFL roster, ultimately off the practice squad. And he actually seemed to know what he was doing in the NFL for a number of years too. But he literally used to have people find a coach that would give him the practice script. So that's probably a bit extreme, but you definitely bring up a good point on the seeing things over and over again.
I mean, you brought up Will Compton. Is it a rule across the NFL? Or maybe it's just with the Commanders that number 51 has to be a random white linebacker? Because you had Will Compton, and then you had David Mayo last year. Mm-hmm. This year they got Bo Bauer, who just has the greatest blonde mullet in the world, who's wearing number 51 as well. It's been funny, and I've joked with Will a couple times over the years about every linebacker that wears that number is trying to live up to his reputation.
The Will Compton Memorial number must be worn by a white linebacker. What a tradition. Some traditions, Mitch, should carry through to the new regime. All right, Mitch Tishler, Beltway Football Podcast. Appreciate your time, sir, and I'll see you back out here tomorrow.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, bud.
That is Mitch Tishler, everybody. Check him and JP out on the Beltway Football Podcast. And Mitch, of course, a frequent guest on the B. Mitch and Finley Show as well over on 106.7 The Fan, which you can listen to the same way you listen to us on the free Odyssey app. When we get back here on the Team 980, a quick edition of This, That, and the Other Thing. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Thanks again to Daryl Tap, who joined us earlier in the hour, Mitch Tishler for sticking with us. And now, Anthony, before we get to our Pick 6 at 6, it's time for a little edition of This, That, and the Other Thing, where we take 3 stories that we want to talk about, but maybe not for a full segment, and we mush them all together. This one we could talk about for a full segment, and we actually might get back into it a little bit later on in the show. But, Anthony, cue up the celebration. The Washington Mystics are off the schneid. Yeah! They have won a basketball game. And they have also, in my heart of hearts, proven a point, which is that if Brittany Sykes had not been hurt, this team would be much closer to 500 than they would be a 0-whatever they were going, 0-12 going into yesterday. Brittany Sykes was a plus 20 in 14 minutes yesterday. Plus 20. She was awesome. Hit threes, made defensive plays, did all the Brittany Sykes stuff. And for a team that's lost like 4 or 5 games by like 2 or 3 points, you're trying to tell me that she wouldn't have been the difference in some of those games? Come on. They were fantastic. Put together a full 40 minutes. The only scary thing is Brittany might have tweaked her ankle again or hurt her foot. They were up big, so she didn't have to come back into the game after that. But here's to hoping that she is back on the floor for good for the rest of the season, because losing every single game is not a good time.
It is not a good time at all. Even though I do want us to, have good draft position, I still want us to get a couple of dubs. Winning games does matter at the end of the day, too.
That's the beauty of it, right? They have dug themselves a beautiful 0-12 start.
Yeah.
For drafting position, right? They have given themselves an 0-12 hole, or an 0-12 lead in the Paige Becker sweepstakes.
Yes.
And I'm not mad about that. I would love Paige Beckers to be here next year. That would be fantastic. As I've told a couple of people, hey, if they get Paige, we're going to spend some more time at Capital One Arena.
A lot more time, Craig.
All due respect to ESA, lovely facility, bomb place to watch games. They pack it out. It is high energy. I actually love games at ESA. I love the Mystics getting to play at Capital One more. And if they have Paige Beckers, they're going to play at Capital One more. But also being miserably terrible the entire year.
Yeah.
We as a basketball city deserve better than the record combined of the Wizards and Mystics. And I know both organizations are working very hard to make that so. That is just a fact that you can't be losing year round.
Can't do that.
No.
That's too much loss.
Too much losing. All right. That's this. Here's that. The U.S. men's national team is back in action tonight. And hot question, Anthony. Is Greg Berhalter's job on the line?
This is the guy they hired last year, right?
This is the guy they hired rehired, right? He was their coach through the World Cup.
Yep.
Then they went on a big search to be like, who's the best coach we can find? And they went right back to the guy that didn't accomplish what they needed to do in the World Cup. And also caused a big kerfuffle in the aftermath by saying some stuff about a player that he shouldn't have said. That was a more complicated controversy, but it all kind of started because he didn't play one of his best players in the World Cup and didn't handle it particularly well. And the answer is not immediately. There is basically no way that Greg Berhalter is going to get fired even if Brazil beats the crap out of the U.S. men's national team tonight, because they have a tournament that starts in 11 days. Their first Copa America game is June 23rd. But if they get blown out tonight and they bust in Copa America, they should make a move. U.S. Soccer should just be like, we messed up. I don't know how we went back on Greg, and they should go find a better coach. They literally just hired one of the best coaches in the world on the women's side in Emma Hayes. Go get one of the best on the men's side. And that is a semi-complicated issue because, unfortunately, it's cheaper to hire one of the best women's coaches in the world with the money on the women's side versus the men. And it is stipulated in U.S. Soccer's contract that whatever the women's coach makes or whatever the men's coach makes, the women's coach should make. So Emma Hayes, whatever her contract is, and Emma Hayes, I'm sure, is very well compensated to be the head coach of the U.S. women's national team, but is it going to be enough to lure a men's coach who is used to European men's club money, right? Like if you're someone who has coached at Arsenal or Chelsea or wherever, like, are you going to be willing to take the paycheck to be the coach of the U.S. men's national team? I don't know. That is something they need to figure out. But you can't go lose 5-1 to Colombia, get blown out by Brazil, and bust in Copa America and just prove that you don't belong at this level after you've already kind of proven you don't belong at this level. And I've never been impressed with him. I sat down and interviewed him, and I walked away going, that's it? All due respect, of course. Greg, multiple G's at the end. Last but not least, and and the other thing, and definitely not least, in fact, saving the legend for last here. Jerry West passed away this morning at the age of 86. And if this was a lighter news day, I would love to spend an hour just getting people on to tell Jerry West stories. This is a man who, the NBA is roughly 80 years old, Anthony. Where it's like 78 or 70, 77. They did the NBA 75 team a couple years ago, right? So we're talking about roughly 80 years old. In the first 40 years of the NBA, Jerry West was arguably its second best player, certainly top 5. Second best behind Bill Russell. I think Wilt probably has something to say with that. Wilt's career kind of extends into that second 40 years. But either way, like, Wilt's career did. So they were about the same time. So some combination of Wilt, Bill Russell, and Jerry West are probably the 3 best players of the first 40 years of the NBA. If you want to throw some of the other Celtics in there, you want to throw whoever. He's safely top 5. Elgin Baylor, his teammate with the Lakers. He's safely top 5, right? In the second 40 years of the NBA, he is inarguably one of the 5 best executives. Built the Showtime Lakers, built the Shaq and Kobe Lakers, built the Kobe Powell Lakers. He was a really, really integral part as an advisor of building the Warriors. He built the Clippers teams that were really good for the first part of the 2010s and helped build them as an executive. I do believe he was back with the Clippers by the time that they he helped them get Kawhi. Like, this dude's resume, the Grizzlies teams that were awesome, with Marc Gasol and the grit and grind Grizzlies, he built them. This dude's resume is insane. And actually, now I think about it, the Powell-Kobe Lakers are in part, he actually wasn't there for them, but he actually traded Powell to L.A., so in kind of way he did, but he was the executive in Memphis. But he got crushed for that trade, but in getting Mark, if the brothers were traded for each other, he set up what was a basically decade-long run of competitive basketball where the Grizzlies were consistently a top 5 team in the Western Conference. So his resume is just ridiculous as an executive. As a player, he's all-time. He's the logo of the league. And as a competitor, unmatched. This is a dude who, a couple years ago, was on a panel and said this. He goes, we talk about the word dog a lot. Is that guy a dog? I was a wolf. I ate dogs. That was Jerry West. Competitive as hell, skilled as hell, tremendous, tremendous player, tremendous executive, an absolute legend, and from everything I know about him, a fine man too. So rest in peace to him. Best to his family and the NBA family this morning. The great Jerry West passed away this morning at the age of 86. When we get back here in Ashburn, as we're live on the Hoffman Show following Commanders OTAs, we will recap the day. Jaden Daniels at the podium. You'll hear lots from the Commanders' presumptive starting quarterback. It's our Pick 6 at 6 next. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980, and it is just after 6 o'clock. We're live in Ashburn after minicamp day number 2, and that means it's time for our Pick 6.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level, build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
All right, it was Jaden Daniels' day here in Ashburn, a.k.a. QB. I'm going to start calling him QB1 because he's been QB1 the last at least 3 practices, and there's just so many there's only so many in a row that you say, like, hey, he's QB1. Is he actually QB1? And you just eventually you're like, I'm using my own intuition here. QB1, draft pick number 2. Number 1 of the Dan Quinn, Adam Peters era. Spoke and we got a bunch of it, starting with number 1.
Number 1.
He became famous, whatever, at LSU for his work ethic and the early mornings. And so he was asked today how that routine has transferred over to the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, I get here around like 5:45, and just like walking through in the bubble, in the indoor, watching film and stuff like that. But prepare myself for the day. It's just that routine that I had when I was in college, but now I'm in there actually walking through because I'm still learning the playbook and trying to grasp everything. So just being comfortable for the day and being ready to go out there and go out and compete at practice.
Are you by yourself when you're doing that?
Me and Luke McCaffrey.
One, I love that Luke is with him, and I wish I knew that yesterday when I spoke to Luke McCaffrey. If you missed that, you can check it out in the Hoffman Show podcast feed or on demand on YouTube at Craig Hoffman or at the Team 980. But I think one thing that has unlocked Jaden Daniels is somewhere along the line, Jaden Daniels understood, or someone told him, or just intuitively figured out, he is an experiential learner. And what that means is you learn by doing, right? So you can be an auditory learner, a visual learner. Some people can look at something and be like, okay, I got it. Some people can be told, they hear it. They're like, okay, I got it. Very clearly, Jaden Daniels is an experiential learner. And this is why the VR stuff is so important for him. Because when he has that VR headset on, he's essentially living the experience, and that is how he learns. And so the fact that he's in here, where I am right now, in the bubble, before practice every single day, he's got the script, he's understanding, okay, I need to go through this so that I am prepared. Some guys can do that by looking at the script and understanding just intuitively what it is. They've run the plays before, or they studied them in the playbook, and they don't need to do it, they just need to see it. Or they were in an install meeting and they heard a coach talk about it, and that was good enough. For Jaden, for that final piece to click, for him to feel really comfortable with it, for him to have a comfortability to say, I got this at the level I need to go out to practice, he needs to do it. And so he has figured out a routine where he does it, and now he's got a battle buddy with him in Luke McCaffrey, who's a football sponge. That dude loves to learn. And that is a great pairing. And Luke's a former quarterback. I'm sure that's helpful at times. But also just for Luke, like, to get that rapport with Jaden and to run through this stuff himself. Maybe he's also an experiential learner. And so I can't express enough how much admiration I have for Jaden for putting in that kind of work, because that takes time and it takes dedication to get up that early in the morning. I certainly am not I'm a pretty good morning person, but I'm not a 5:45. I'm up and I'm moving morning person. And a lot of quarterbacks will tell you that's what it takes in this league. It's just, I guess he could do it after practice and kind of prepare for the next day, but your body's sore, you've already been through practice, whatever. And so the time to do it is that early morning and before all the coaches are in, before the meetings, before breakfast, before everything. And he does it. And credit to him. And it's impressed his teammates, including veterans like Nick Allegretti, who mentioned the other day that he's there pretty early, but not as early as Jaden, which was brought up to Jaden today.
Yeah, 100%. the work that you put in is the work that you're gonna, give out. And if you really want to be successful, you want to learn, you want to be a pro at the highest level, you got to take knowledge of people, learn from their routines, what help them be successful. Obviously, Nick, he was with the Chiefs and what they did over there. So he gets here early, man, and I'm always an early guy. I kind of learned that when I was at LSU, and now I took it here. Still trying to tweak it a little bit, but I still got a long way to go.
I do imagine there's some tweaking that has to happen. I wanted to ask Jaden about this, but he had already been asked about the routine a couple times by the time I was talking to somebody else and then got up to the press conference. But I'd imagine there was like a week period where he's like, okay, how do I get into the bubble? Where's the weight room? Where's this thing that I want in the weight room? What time can I get breakfast? There's just new job stuff that no matter what job you're doing, quarterback of the Washington Commanders, radio host, finance guy, whatever. You got to learn the new stuff in the office. And so I wonder how long it took for him to kind of get that routine. And he said he still is trying to figure out the best way to do it as a pro. All right, number two.
Number two.
Something that has stuck out to me in talking to Derek Forrest today and Luke McCaffrey yesterday one-on-one is the gigantic megawatt smiles on their faces. And I don't think it's because they think I'm the world's greatest interviewer and they're having the most fun talking to me. I hope that they're having fun. I think the interviews were very good. Defo was earlier in the show today, Luke yesterday, again, both on all of our on-demand platforms. But, these guys are clearly having a great time out there. And Jaden Daniels, that includes him and the rest of his rookie class. And JD5 asked about the fun that everybody seems to be having, at least, today at the podium.
A ton. It's something I dreamt about since I was a kid. Be able to come out here and just have the blessing to go out there and play football at the highest level. You can't take it for granted because it could be done at any moment.
100%, and it's a dream coming true, but it's also the atmosphere. Some rookies get to the league. This is across all sports, right? Some rookies get to the league, and you're like, man, this is tough. This is a grind. This is a beating. And eventually you figure it out, but it's not always fun. And some are Jaden Daniels, and they're like, man, dream come true. I got great support staff. I like Cliff Kingsbury, like Marcus and Jeff and Sam Hartman are great in my room. Like, this is fantastic. It's kind of funny, and I'll swerve for a second. The WNBA version of this right now is sometimes you come into the league and you're Caitlin Clark, and you go to the Fever and you're getting your butt kicked and it's everything. And then sometimes you're Kate Martin, and you go to the Las Vegas Aces and you're having the time of your life walking around with a Hello Kitty backpack. And you're all the fun memes.
Hello Kitty. Yeah, and a nice boombox that they were gifted, like when she first got
and $100,000.
And exactly, I was about to say that too.
What a time.
She's having the time of her life.
Advantage on that one, Kate. Anyway, Jaden and company having a good time. And it's not just the rookies, the vets, which matters. It just seems like a great place to be. I mean, the coaches, too. Daryl Tap was delightful when he sat down. And that, I think, is the standard, is, hey, we're going to work hard, but we're going to have fun. As Dan Quinn said, there's nothing better than kicking tail with people that you like. And that is their plan 24/7, 365 here in Ashburn. We'll see how well they do on that part. To number three.
Number three.
We'll bookend with Daniels. Number 5 and number 6 in our Pick 6 at 6 will be more from JD. But two other things from today that I wanted to touch on. No soundbite on this one, just observations. So the offensive line rotation today was interesting. I don't know that, it's noteworthy in that you're going to write down, make a note, but I don't know that it's like, hey, this is really significant. So I'm prefacing it with that. But they continue to rotate everywhere. But I've never really seen, outside of a true position battle, an offense rotate along the offensive line like these guys have, where they are intentionally mixing and matching. And, yeah, you cross-train guys. Of course, guys get days off, and sometimes it happens naturally. But to just say, hey, everybody's healthy, but today, Cornelius Lucas, you're the second-string right tackle. Nick Allegretti, you're the second-string center. Michael Dieter, you're the first-string left guard. Brandon Coleman, first-string left tackle, is interesting. And I love it because it's the same thing we talked about yesterday with mixing and matching all these defensive backs. You want to both cross-train guys to be available at different positions, to have some familiarity with some different guys next to them if they are forced into action. And all these guys could be potential starters, probably except for Dieter, injury pending. I would be stunned if Allegretti's not the starting left guard, and they just want to make sure he gets some reps at center in case they ultimately have an injury to Tyler Biadasz, and maybe that's their plan, is they think they're better versus subbing Ricky Stromberg or another backup center in, or even Dieter at center. They think Dieter's a better guard. So you have Allegretti kick in and Dieter play guard. And it's a way to get your best 5 on the field. But to figure out who your best 5 are, you need to let them play with other guys, because if a guy is constantly having an issue and maybe that issue is spurned on by the guy next to him, well, you change the guy next to him and the issue gets fixed and you go, oh, well, okay, now I understand better. So it's an evaluation tool. It's a learning tool where you have to, play off different guys. I just think it's really smart, and it was interesting to see. I also think it's, whatever significance it is, I don't think it's the best thing for Ricky Stromberg that he's all of a sudden being bumped down to being the third center. Maybe it was just for today. Maybe it was a cross-training thing for Allegretti specifically, and Stromberg will be back with the 2s tomorrow. But I think it was worth noting, and of course it's worth noting that Brandon Coleman is out there at left tackle and was out in space showing off his athleticism. And we'll see ultimately when they get pads on how well he performs in that position, because I think ideally he wins that job and he's there obviously for the next 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years would be the optimal turnout for the mid-round pick out of TCU. Okay, number 4. Our pick 6 at 6. 6 biggest storylines of the day, 6 observations at 6 o'clock. Continue to just hear nothing but great things about Bobby Wagner, both from the defensive guys and the offensive guys. Jaden Daniels actually talked about his conversations with the future Hall of Famer and what he's learning from the Commanders' middle linebacker.
A lot. I mean, I talk to them all the time. Just what did they see? Why they do this? What did you see from this? What made you check to this? Stuff like that. But I mean, that just comes with the game. You're trying to soak up as much knowledge as possible. And you got guys like Bobby that have been playing at a high level for a very long time. So as much as I could be around them and pick their brain, I'm willing to do that.
No doubt. And I think that is worth noting, not just because it shows well for Jaden, it shows well for Bobby, but there's a couple times in his press conference today where Jaden showed a clear comfortability talking about defensive players. And I know this might sound weird, but that's not normal. Because a lot of times in the NFL, the offense and the defense kind of live in separate worlds, and the togetherness of this entire team is a thing. And the fact that Jaden is super comfortable with John Enderon and Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu and Jeremy Chin and all these guys speaks well to him as an individual, and the fact that guys gravitate to him. It's something that is important for a quarterback, and he's got it in spades. But it is also a credit to DQ and AP and everyone else up and down the front office and the coaching staff who has set a culture, and also been, to use a word that Daryl Tap used with us a lot earlier, intentional. They have done things on purpose to get these guys to know each other because they want these things to happen. They want guys to pick each other's brains. Bobby can learn something from Jaden. Probably not as much as Jaden can learn from Bobby, not by a long shot. But they want those conversations to be open and flowing so they're a better team in September and forward because of those types of relationships. Now, defense to defense, that's a little bit more normal. And Derek Forrest talked with me earlier today about the impact that Bobby Wagner's had on him.
The way that he goes about things, man, the way that he gets in here early, take care of his body, he works out early in the morning, and then he just goes throughout his day with a routine, man, and that's important. He's in year, 14, 15, man, and he's still doing great. So just learning his routine and how to take care of your body and come into every day ready to work.
I think it's interesting that Forrest has been around here for a couple years, and he now sees that there's a different level. It shows you that the people that were here weren't on that level. And make that an indictment of whoever you want, but I'm glad that Bobby Wagner is here now. There's a reason that dude's a gold jacket guy, and they just haven't had one of those in a long, long time. Certainly one that plays and prepares like Bobby Wagner. All right, back to Jaden Daniels. A couple things to wrap up our pick 6 at 6.
Number 5.
This one's the quote of the day. You might have gotten an ESPN alert about it type of thing. Jaden Daniels was asked about kind of his last couple weeks. He threw out the first pitch of the Nats game. That'll be number 6, the first pitch itself. But going to the U.S.-Columbia game at Commanders Field over the weekend, getting to intake some of the things that you get to do when you're a quarterback, or the quarterback specifically of the Washington Commanders. And Alex from DC News Now, who asked the question, said, star quarterback. And Jaden made sure that didn't slide as he answered the question.
I mean, I ain't a star quarterback. Yeah, I got along with it. I'm a rookie to answer that. But just coming out here and just being able to experience different things. Like, that was my first time throwing out a first pitch. That was my first time going to a soccer game and just seeing the atmosphere, seeing different sports, and be able to just go out there and support them, coming into a new town, a new community, and be able to go out there and support, and, showing them love. So when our season come around, the players at the Nationals game, or, people on the Team USA for soccer want to come to a game, they can come show love too.
I thought that was fun. He's like, hey, I'm just doing my thing, and y'all come see us do ours. But the first part of that is the most important, because it's not just like a perfunctory, performative, oh, I'm not a star quarterback. He's like, I'm not a star quarterback. I'm a rookie. I ain't even put pads on yet. Like, that genuineness in pushing back on that narrative comes from, I think, a really, really pure place of him not wanting the pressure. I don't think that bothers him. I think he doesn't feel like he deserves that. And he is the kind of guy that when he doesn't feel like he deserves something, he doesn't want it. He wants to work for it. And that is a very different attitude than a lot of young guys who are highly touted coming to this league with, certainly ones who have been drafted to play quarterback here. And it is the type of thing that can drive success or drive failure if you don't have it. And Jaden Daniels has it. And again, we wrap up the pick six for the second straight day with the fact that it's good that he has it and is putting it towards football, not baseball. Number 6, please.
Number 6.
So, Jaden, what happened with the first pitch?
I mean, it's already on social media, so it's not really the tape. Blame that guy right there. He touched the baseball. Sam Hartman helped me warm up, so, I blame them.
Typically, throwing your teammates under the bus, bad. When it's about a first pitch and the person you're throwing under the bus is a PR guy, the great Charlie Mule, I'll allow it. Frankly, I'll allow it. Poor Charlie. Just out there doing his job, making sure the backdrop doesn't fall over, making sure that we don't ask too many questions, supervising the press conference, and he's catching strays from Jaden Daniels. But if he gave him bad advice, Charlie, you got to take accountability too, bro. I mean, them's just the rules. Accountability all around. If Jaden's right, he's right. Now, if he's throwing you under the bus, then you guys can have a conversation. That's between teammates. It's not for the rest of us. He's a good sport about it. It's fun. Charlie was laughing. Jaden was laughing. Everyone's having a good time. It's June. It's the time to have a good time in the NFL. All right, that's our pick 6. We will presumably do another pick 6 tomorrow at 6 p.m. There is a practice. It's 11 a.m. to 12:30 here in Ashburn. So we will be doing the show back from in studio tomorrow. Logan will be back in town. He's actually missed the last couple of days, but he's going to practice tomorrow. So he and I will record a Take Command podcast. We'll probably play some of that for you on the radio. But presuming that it's like a real full practice, which an hour and a half on the schedule means it should be, we will probably have a pick 6 for you. DQ also speaking before practice tomorrow as well. So that's our pick 6. And when we get back, the segment that I've been waiting to do really for 2 days. A coach, a pretty prominent one, said you can't coach effort. I think that's ridiculous, and I want to talk about it. Next, it's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're live on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And in just a moment, Anthony, I will be the final person here in the bubble. Today, I am the last man standing.
Are you sad?
Am I sad? No, I mean, it's kind of expected.
Oh, okay. Sometimes I just don't like being the last person to leave a place.
I mean, in some ways it's cool. It's like I got this whole bubble to myself. I can go out and run routes. They probably have footage. They probably some security guard be like, "Hey, idiot, stop, go home." Slash, you're not allowed back.
I was about to say, who's throwing you routes?
No one, because there's no one else here. What if Jaden was like, "I just need to get some extra work in"? I'd be like, "I'll run some routes for you. I'm not really wearing the right shoes. They'll be a little slow, and I'm probably going to drop a lot of balls."
That would be lit, though.
I mean, you realize how hard these dudes throw relative to like the rest of it? No, it's just the rest of us playing catch. Like the velocity is a lot different.
You're right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Have you ever caught a football on a gun?
That's a good question. I don't think I have. I don't think I've used a jugs machine NFL style.
Those move really fast.
Yeah, and they're simulating what these guys do. I mean, I've caught balls from like guys who played in high school, and I was like, oh, that's different than when my friends and I go play. Or like, you know what's funny? Like Chris Gorez and I, my training podcast co-host, he played D1 at Cornell. And so like he trains NFL guys, and so he's used to throwing hard. And so sometimes we'll go play catch or whatever, and like we'll just mess around before we're warming up before a workout, or like I'll join in on some of his NFL stuff, and so we're getting loose to make sure that we're ready to throw to the guys, or he's ready to throw to the guys, and I'll go out and mock playing DB or whatever back in the day when we would do this kind of stuff, or I'll play wide receiver, and like when I would do this with Lorenzo, like I would play receiver just enough to like give him a read. It's not like I'm out here I'm not juking Lorenzo Alexander out of anything. So if it was real competition, I'd be covered 11 out of 10 times. But, like, Chris would start throwing. I'd be like, dude, can we ease into it a little bit? Like, why are you throwing the ball this hard? He'd be like, my bad, I forgot. You're not in the NFL. I was like, yeah, that is correct. I'm not in the NFL. So, there's
At least you're putting in the effort, Craig. That's all that matters.
I would. You know what, Anthony? That's a great transition. Because you can coach effort. So the other night, after the Indiana Fever got waxed by the Connecticut Sun, their coach, Christy Sides, said one of the most annoying things that coaches say, which is, you can't coach effort. And that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, listeners of every variety and kind, is wrong. And not only is it wrong, is an indictment of Christy Sides as a coach. As background, not to be unfair to Christy Sides here. Christy Sides was a longtime WNBA assistant. She was very well respected. It was not surprising that she got the Indiana Fever job within the last couple of years. She is someone who was long seen as a future head coach. And that's all fine and dandy. But realistically, Christy Sides seems to be in over her head with Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, and they have been terrible from a tactical standpoint, trying to find the best ways to maximize the number one pick in the most previous two WNBA drafts. But there is also a non-tactical element to the Indiana Fever's debacle-like start of the season that I think actually is evidence for the fact that Sides is telling on herself. And I don't really want to make this about Christy Sides, but there's kind of no other way to go about it since she's the one that said it. She said it. It's on her. But this also applies to every other coach in every other sport. Because ultimately, if there is a player who is not putting forth the effort you want to see, that is on the player, right? If everyone else is doing it right, I think the coach is probably doing the things that they need to do. And maybe they haven't found the way to reach that player yet. But culturally speaking, on the largest level, they are doing the types of things to create a standard that says, this is how we play. And if the entire team is not playing to a said standard or to an acceptable professional winning standard, that is a reflection of the coach. And the idea that you can't coach effort is actually disproven right here in Ashburn, Virginia. How about it for the first time in what feels like forever? Certainly since I've been covering the Washington Commanders, I see how they coach effort here in D.C. When guys don't play with the intensity on the football field that is required, they are spoken to about it. And they also, by the way, find ways to create energy. They find ways to compete, to have fun, to make sure that the energy and the vibes and all that kind of stuff that goes into ultimately playing with effort, because you're just turned up, they found ways to do it. And I think this is true across sports. I don't think this is just a football thing, right? I saw a video earlier today from the University of South Carolina's basketballs, as in Dawn Staley's team, the women, their strength coach. And they're in the middle of their offseason right now, obviously. And I don't know whether this is from today or this was a video that the strength coach put up from during the season. But it was just titled Warm-Ups. And this is on Instagram. And it's the players playing a game where they're like tossing I think it was a lacrosse ball, maybe it was a tennis ball that was like a painted blue or something. But it was some kind of small lacrosse tennis-sized ball that they would toss around, and they would have to, like, basically, it was kind of like an ultimate Frisbee-looking game, where if you got tagged when you had the ball, it was a turnover, and just the idea that you're having fun and competing, and there's great energy, and that gets you warmed up, ready to go. It gets your competitive juices flowing. And I would guess, as someone who has been around high-level athletics, as both a reporter and a coach for a long time now, that creates better practices. Because every great practice that I've been to, every great coach that I've been around does these types of things. They find ways to create a standard. One of my favorite sayings along this, one of my favorite coaching mantras is from Sean McVay. Sean was fond of saying, the standard is the standard, which is to say, this is how we do it. We don't compromise. Either you do it this way or you're not here. And I don't think Sean McVay has this reputation as some kind of dictator of a coach where nobody ever has any fun. And to watch Dan Quinn go through this, to watch Sean when he was here do this, a guy like Kevin O'Connell, the energy he brings. Cliff, I think, has a lot of this to him. Watching him coach, where it's just like, hey, this is how it's done. Don't do it the other way. We're going to help you get to this way, and we're not going to accept behavior, especially on the field or on the floor, if we're talking basketball, that is not how we do things. And, like, I'll give Eric Tebow credit here, right? The Mystics going into last night's game are 0-12. But there was not a time where you watched them play where they weren't playing hard, playing with effort. There were times they were incredibly sloppy. There were times where I think they were unfocused. But they were also under-talented. Like, that's the problem with the Mystics' 0-12 start on the season, is they were under-talented. There are times you watch the Indiana Fever play, including Caitlin Clark, where you're just like, that's not professional. That is not professional grade. Clark doesn't get the ball where she wants it, and she kind of does the pouty thing. And she did it at Iowa, too. You get away with it at Iowa. And the Iowa coaches, by the way, eventually coached it out of her in a big way. She's way better than she was when she was a younger player. But you have to keep playing. Like, now you're not going to be able to make it up in 20 seconds. You're not going to be able to pout, push off, go get the ball, drain a step-back three with the ease you did at Iowa. She still does it on a regular basis. It's sick. She's an ultra-talented player. This is not meant to be like a bash Caitlin Clark segment, for sure. But she's a part of the problem they have there. But I don't think it's actually Caitlin. That's the thing. I look at what Caitlin does, and if I was the coach there, and I hate to do that, if there was a better coach there, because I can't coach WNBA basketball. Let's not become that guy. But if there is a better coach there, if there is someone who is a better people manager there, because I'm sure that Christy Sides has tactic stuff up her sleeve, that she's a very, very smart basketball mind. And you've actually already seen that. You've seen the Fever improve and find ways to get Clark off the ball, make life a little easier for her, try to find ways to use their personnel better as they finally got a chance to practice. They've evolved a little bit as a basketball team. But the stuff that hasn't changed with them is the stuff that if there was a better people manager, a higher caliber of coach there, would not fly. It would not have made it into the first game. Nevertheless, the 12th, 13th, 14th, that whatever we're about to be in now for Indiana. And that would mean that group would be more successful and be having a lot more fun. They'd be under a lot less scrutiny. And it's the kind of thing that gets you fired as a coach. It's kind of what got it is what got Wes Unseld fired. You know, Wes, I think, was kind of the same, like, hey, you can't coach effort. And Brian Keefe came in, and he coached effort. Now, I think as a coach, often first you want to coach tactics, and then you want to coach intensity because you want to make sure they have the tactics down. But sometimes you just need to let a fire under a team. Sometimes you have to make sure that, like, hey, make a mistake, but make it quickly and keep playing. Don't pout. Keep going. Don't give up. Compete. And ultimately in pro sports, if a group of players doesn't respond to that, those players will be gone. But if it keeps happening, or you know the players have it in them, because Clark is competitive as hell. Aaliyah Boston is competitive as hell. Nalissa Smith, all those players, these are the best of the best. The WNBA is the best 144 women's basketball players on the planet, bar none. 144 jobs in that league. And there are 200-something caliber WNBA players probably in the world that could easily interchange. That league is full of the most competitive people in the world in that sport. And if you can't help them channel that competitiveness in the same way that an NFL coach, an NBA coach, etc., if you can't help them channel that, if you don't create a standard and a culture that says, this is how we do it, our competitive spirit is channeled into productivity these ways, and these things that take away from our ability to compete are not allowed, that is ultimately, if it's a group of them, if it's the whole team, not a reflection of the players. It is a reflection of the coach. And so, Christy Sides, yikes, yikes, yikes. You done told on yourself, and I really, really do wonder if the Fever continue to struggle, maybe into the Olympic break, if there are not changes in the front office and or the coaching staff, either this year or quickly after this season, because wow, what an insane thing to say into a microphone. Speaking of things that people said into microphones, real things real people said into real microphones wraps up our show next.
Here's what's trending on the Team 980.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're live on the Team 980, always live as well on the free, I said free, Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. And Anthony, we have breaking news. So we're gonna nix real things. We just ran out of time today in a lot of ways because we needed to talk about the Commanders and all the other things. But we also we just didn't get a chance to talk about the NBA Finals. And so we are going to do that now with the breaking news that Kristaps Porzingis is out for Game 3. And this is a big deal for the Boston Celtics and a big deal for the Dallas Mavericks. In a series that has swung in many ways in Kristaps Porzingis' minutes, everything changes tactically for Boston and thus for Dallas. The lobs become open. The way they play defense reemerges much more significantly. And there's a couple key stats that I thought were really interesting that Zach Lowe mentioned on his pod that I'm just going to steal from him, except for it's not stealing because I'm giving him credit. The Dallas Mavericks in the first 2 games of this series have averaged 14 catch-and-shoot threes per game. Not makes, attempts. 14. The Celtics have averaged 30. And so the percentages are not good either. But when we talk about Dallas being able, or Boston, to be able to play defensively the way they want, where they can switch, they're not get caught in rotations, they're letting guys go one-on-one because they have the defenders to actually go one-on-one against Luka and Kyrie, and obviously Kyrie's missed a ton of shots, but they don't have to help at the rate everyone else has to help. Part of that has been in the minutes Porzingis is on the floor, like his length is still a problem for Luka and for Kyrie. Like even if you get him in a switch, okay, go ahead. Try to get past 7-3 or try to shoot over 7-3. Good luck, especially with Porzingis' athleticism. It's not happening. Meanwhile, every other team, even, you get Gobert and all those guys, Cat, Naz Reid in Minnesota, they had to help. You get the 2 on the ball. Now you get a defense in rotation, and those catch-and-shoot threes that are the basis of most NBA offenses are available to you. And they just haven't been able to get off the attempts in this series. So that's just one huge stat that kind of emphasizes the importance of Kristaps Porzingis. Nevertheless, what he's meant to them offensively, where he's pulled their bigs away from the rim, defensively when they do get in pick and roll, and he's able to kind of play the ball and also play the lob because he's so freaking long. And he puts Luka, especially in some more indecisive moments than Luka Doncic faces against almost anyone else in the league. And this is enough to swing the series if he misses the rest of it. Am I predicting that? Absolutely not. Because I think Boston obviously is used to playing without Porzingis, and they already have a 2-game head start. Ultimately, the task for the Dallas Mavericks is you have to win 4 of 5 games against a team that has already won 78 games on the season. So, tough sledding, as they say. Celtics go 2-2 in the next 4 games. They win the series in 6. That's the task that the Mavs have here. But don't get it twisted. I think it's the most significant injury that the Boston Celtics could suffer. And I realize how ridiculous that is because Tatum and Brown are so freaking good. But he's the one that changes the math of the series because he's so unique in a way that I think could flip this thing certainly back in Dallas' favor tonight, if not open the window they need to make this a full series.
With all of that in mind, which do you think would be more likely to happen? A Celtic sweep or for this series to go 7?
Unless whatever Luka's battling, injury-wise, which is like 4 different things, extremely hinders his play, I think it is almost impossible for the Celtics to sweep this Mavericks team without Porzingis. There's no way, right? Like, Kyrie hasn't hit a 3 in the series, and he's had a ton of open looks. And that dude's been a killer in big playoffs games for his entire career. So I would think this series going 7 is more likely than a Celtics sweep with this news. But I guess if the Celtics win tonight and Porzingis comes back for Game 4, that sweep could be on. So I don't know. My answer to your radio producer hot question is a 7-game series is more likely. What's your answer?
I would say, I think for the series to go 7, just because, again, what you said, I don't expect Kyrie to continue to struggle in the manner in which he did. But at the same token, the Celtics have played good without Porzingis. They've won their games without them.
Yeah, but they were playing, the best team they played was the Indiana Pacers. Come on. And they were banged up.
They were, but also in the regular season, they went 30-5 without Porzingis this season.
That's true.
That's really good.
That's true.
But also, like in a situation like this, and you have Al Horford playing more minutes. He's 38 years old. How sustainable is that over,
that's the question,
an entire
right? Is
series?
who gets the minutes, right? Do they? Because that's the thing is, Porzingis has only played like 20-something minutes in each of these games. It's just that the Celtics have been like plus 20 both games when he's on the floor, and they won the first game by 20 and the second game by less than 20. So it tells you in those 20 minutes, that's where the series is swung. And because Boston is so deep, Porzingis has also been playing off the bench, meaning he's playing bench players, and thus the advantage that he has is even bigger. So that is something that is interesting, too, is they lose a significant bench advantage in this series that has also been a changer. And I don't know whether it's O'Shea Brissett, go Orange, whether it's Luke Cornett. Like they've got some options at the 5, but it'll be interesting to see how Joe Mazzulla handles it. All right, Anthony, what time are we done? I know it's
56:30.
Oh, okay. So we have a solid 30 seconds left in the show. All right.
Yes, we do.
Game 3 tonight. Who you got?
That's a lot of pressure. I'm going to go with the Dallas Mavericks, though. Gotta go with them.
I will also go with the Dallas Mavericks. I think Kyrie gets back on track. Not necessarily like an amazing game. I do think there's a chance Luka goes ballistic tonight. That he has like a 35, 15, and 15 type of game. We'll see. We'll talk about it tomorrow. One more day of minicamp as well. We'll see you back in studio tomorrow. Thanks for listening to The Hoffman Show.